What's up everybody, Gamble here, bringing you the latest tips, tricks, and news in Pokemon Go PvP. And one quick little bit of news if you're into the Sylph tournament scene, they did update the Sylph rankings to, I think, make unweighted cups put a little bit more weight into your ranking, which is amazing for me as somebody who has won like 3 tournament badges that were all unweighted cups. That change actually did bump me up from Rival up to Challenger. Not sure if I trust that. But in this video, I want to bring you a quick tip for building some tricky team comps for Sylph tournaments and maybe for Go Battle League coming up. I mean, I don't know. I think Niantic has been watching the Sylph tournaments, and I do hope that they end up bringing in that whole 6 Pokemon team thing in the Go Battle League. I don't know. Anyways, this is a strategy that I've utilized in a few tournaments, and it can be pretty effective. And the general idea of the strategy is you build your team comp with the intention of baiting your opponent into bringing certain Pokemon so that you can counter it. Or you can double up on your strengths and lean into an opponent that might not have a good answer for the team comp that you've built. Now, you can put yourself into a bit of a pickle by running a strategy like this, so you want to make sure that all of the elements are there. Before deciding to utilize this strategy, make sure that these elements are all there within the meta that you're building this strategy for. 1, there are multiple Pokemon with good coverage moves. 2, there are multiple Pokemon that have good bulky stats that could even stand on their own team of maybe 3 or 4 Pokemon. And 3, the meta is predictable. Actually, you know, now that I think about it, the first 2 are really true for any tournament meta. It's really the third one that is most important for this strategy. But I digress. To demonstrate this strategy, I want to look at a team that I used during Sylph's Timeless Cup last month. If you didn't compete or you're just no longer familiar with the rules of this particular format, the meta requires you to select 1 starter Pokemon for your team. And actually, you're only limited to 1 starter, and you're not allowed to use any Pokemon that are Steel, Fighting, Flying, Fairy, Normal, and Psychic. So basically the meta looks something like, and I did borrow this graphic from GamePress, so credit given where credit is due. Looking at this graphic to get a quick understanding of what the meta looked like, we can start going down our checklist and make sure all of the elements are there. And again, I think for the first 2, there is some overlapping. We've got Pokemon with good coverage moves and good bulky stats. We've got Whiscash. Ninetales is in there, has a little bit of coverage. Celio is nice, spammy, gets off those shields. Skuntank has amazing coverage. And all of these Pokemon have really good stats as well. We've got Meganium up in there. And Lapras also. Lapras, very bulky. And most importantly, the meta was very, very predictable. Since everyone was required to bring a starter, you knew that everybody was going to have at least 1 fire, water, or grass. And it was pretty expected that everybody was going to bring alternatives for each of these types. And since the dragons resist all of those moves, and none of the meta really resists dragon type attacks, it was pretty expected that Dragonair and later Kingdra were going to be the top dragons in the meta, and everybody would be putting them on their team. Actually, I think the one thing that I do regret about Timeless is not running Dragonair on any of my teams. But since Dragonair got so popular in the meta, everybody was bringing those water-ice types. Lapras and Celio were staples on people's teams. So with all that in mind, I ended up running this team. And there's a few things that I want you to notice about this team. 1, obviously I ran 2 grass types, but I ran 2 different grass types that have a little bit more diversity. So even though I'm leaning into 1 role and both Pokemon do have similar roles, I'm still giving myself a little bit of diversity, different options to roll with in different situations. 2, there's only really 1 hard counter to Dragonair on my team, and to neutral matchups. So that makes it pretty tempting for somebody to run Dragonair every time. And they're gonna wanna make sure to bring a protector for Dragonair, which for my team is gonna be some kind of grass type, which is pretty nice for my Skuntank. The point is that my team is specifically designed for you to look at those grass types and recognize that there is an advantage when it comes to running certain Pokemon. But if you have that in mind, if you know what your weaknesses are, you can build a team of 3 to be prepared for that. And I do want you to note, this is kind of a risky strategy. It is a fun strategy, but it is a risky strategy, but it scares the crap out of people. When people get paired up against me at tournaments, even if they are significantly better players than I am, which, if I'm being honest, is like 70% of the time, people tell me that they are scared of my team, and that's kind of what it's supposed to do, it's all psychological, the way that I build this team. Anybody who looks at my team at a tournament knows what they need to do to counter the grass types. But also, they know that if they end up going that way, they're leaving themselves open to the rest of my team. So in that way, my team comp can pivot one way or the other. So yes, it's risky for me, but it also puts my opponent into a situation where it's risky for them if they decide to play into what I have set up, or if they decide to call my bluff, basically. This is a really fun strategy, but what I really want you to take away from this video is that with any comp that you build, I want you to know that you have a little bit of power in what Pokemon you face up against. So be aware of your weaknesses, be aware of your strengths, because that's what your opponent is looking at when they look at your team of 6. Be prepared to cover your weaknesses and also lean into your strengths. Just recognize what your opponent is thinking, and I think that will provide for better success in your tournaments. But that has been the very first episode of PvP Quick Tips here on Versus Seeker TV. I do want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.